Welcome to The Explainer, where we break down big ideas. Today, we're diving into a concept that, honestly, might just change how you look at every single project you ever start again.
So, have you ever done this? It's so frustrating, right? You put in all this work, you are right there at the finish line, and for some reason, you just stop. Well, today we're going to dig into a really powerful idea that explains why that last little push, that final sprint, is sometimes the only part that actually matters.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll talk about something called the 95% illusion. Then we'll get into why that final 5% is so critical. We'll look at that tough spot, the darkness before dawn, and then figure out the right mindset to get through it. And finally, what it all looks like when you actually hit 100%. All right, let's jump right in. Section 1, the 95% illusion. This whole idea that most of the work you do is, well, it's just the prelude. I mean, just think about that for a second. The idea here is that almost everything you do on a project, all the planning, the rough drafts, those long grinding hours, it's all just setting the stage. It's absolutely essential, don't get me wrong, but it's not the main event. It's just the warm-up act for that final decisive moment. And this is where it gets really interesting. On the one hand, you've got quantitative change. That's the 95%. It's just more. More hours, more words, more code. You're just piling on effort. But the thing itself, it's still the same. On the other hand, you've got qualitative change. That's the magic in the final 5%. That's when it actually becomes something new, a real transformation. Okay, so that leads us right into the core idea of all this. And honestly, the best way to get it is with a super simple analogy. Picture this. You're boiling a pot of water. You turn on the stove, you wait, the temperature keeps climbing, and it hits 95 degrees Celsius. It's incredibly hot, right? But after all that time and all that energy you've put in, what do you have? You still just have hot water. Nothing has actually fundamentally changed its state. But then you add just a little more heat. And at 100 degrees, bam, a threshold is crossed. That last little push doesn't just make it hotter water, it creates a total change of state. It becomes steam. It's something else entirely now. And that is the whole point. Success, according to this idea, isn't some gradual slope where you get more and more successful. It's more like a cliff. Being 99% of the way there doesn't mean you're 99% successful. Nope. You're still, in a way, at zero, because that transformation, the thing you were working towards, it hasn't happened yet. So this is where it gets tough. This brings us to the hardest part of the whole journey. And really, it's the very reason that final 5% is so powerful in the first place, because it's the exact moment most people give up. The source material calls this the darkness before dawn, and I think that's perfect. You know that feeling? You've put in all this work, you feel like you should be done by now, but instead of getting easier, it actually gets harder, and that's when the doubt starts to creep in. The finish line suddenly feels farther away than when you started. It's a massive test of your will. And look at this. This is like a roadmap to failure, isn't it? It starts so simply. You start complaining, why is this still so hard? But that complaint, it opens the door for doubt. And once you start doubting, your confidence takes a hit. Then, when your confidence is shaky, you start to lose faith in the whole project. And once the faith is gone, well, it's pretty easy to just walk away from what you set out to do in the first place. Okay, so if that's the test, how do you pass it? What's the kind of mindset you need to actually push through that darkness? Well, the answer isn't super complicated, but it is incredibly hard. It really comes down to three things. First, just pure perseverance. You just have to keep going. Second, and this is crucial, you have to persist without complaining. Remember how complaining starts that whole downward spiral? And third, you have to lock onto your original goal. Just hold on tight to the reason you started this whole thing. But here's a really fascinating twist. Sometimes getting to 100% isn't about adding more effort. It's about being willing to give something up. Maybe it's your ego. Maybe it's a comfortable old habit. Or maybe it's just your fixed idea of how things are supposed to go. The source suggests that often the very thing we're stubbornly holding on to, the thing we think is so precious, is the one thing holding us back. All right, let's get to the good part. What's waiting on the other side? What's the actual reward for pushing through all that difficulty? Think about climbing a mountain. The reward isn't just a slightly higher version of the trail you were on. No, it's an entirely new perspective. It's that breathtaking view that you literally cannot see until you take that final step onto the peak. Being one step away from the top might as well be being at the bottom, because you still can't see what's on the other side.
And for the people who do make it, who endure that final darkness and refuse to quit, the source material offers this really beautiful kind of poetic promise of what you'll find.
This is from a classic Chinese poem, and it just captures the feeling perfectly. It's about that moment where the mountains and rivers seem to block your path, and you think, well, that's it. There's no road forward. But you keep going, and suddenly, through the trees, a whole new village appears. It's this whole new world that you couldn't have even imagined a few steps back when you thought you were lost.
And that's really the heart of it, isn't it? The biggest rewards, the real transformations, that exquisite beauty, it's not given to the people who do most of the work. It's reserved exclusively for the people who finish, the ones who go all the way to 100%. So that really just leaves us with one last thing to think about for ourselves. Right now, in your life, what is your final 5%? What's that project or goal you're so close to finishing? And more importantly, what's it going to take for you to push through and finally see that view from the other side?